In today's show, looks like the Houston Rockets are out of the running for Robert Williams, and flowers for a Blazers defensive ace, Toumani Camara appreciation. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making the show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine, make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, the Rockets made a trade to acquire an injured backup center. Guess that takes Robert Williams off the table for the Rockets. Talk about that trade and kind of the market as it sets the tone for Robert Williams' potential movement in the near term, although I think it's unlikely. We'll talk about Toumani Camara, who just straight up didn't make yesterday's episode because I screwed up. So we're going to give him his flowers in the second segment. He was a big part of that Blazers win over the Bucks. And then I want to answer a listener question heading into the weekend. What if the Blazers do nothing at the trade deadline? What if? And the dangers of nothing, if there are any. But let's talk about a trade. There was a relatively minor, certainly for this season, very little impact, on-court impact for this season, none on-court impact for this season. A trade between the Memphis Grizzlies and the Houston Rockets. The Memphis Grizzlies sent veteran center Steven Adams to Houston, and in return, Houston sent Victor Oladipo, 3 second-round picks, 2 in 2024, 1 in 2025, but 3, I think the total is more important for our purposes than when they are. But 3 second-round picks, Victor Oladipo, in exchange for Steven Adams. So what do the Rockets get? The Rockets get, a veteran center who is an elite rebounder. Basically, he's been an elite rebounder, but teams he plays on for his entire career are elite offensive rebounding teams. When Steven Adams is in the game, you get more offensive rebounds, an elite rebounder, and just a rugged physical veteran center. The Memphis Grizzlies get Victor Oladipo, who might not play in the NBA again. He's hasn't been with the Rockets. He's been rehabbing all year. There's no specific plan for him to return. I bet he won't report to Memphis. He just dealt with a ton of injuries. It's been part of the back half of Oladipo's what a really promising career early on, particularly when he got to Indiana, but just has not been able to stay healthy. And so Steven Adams, who hasn't played basketball since in the NBA since January of 2023, he's going to miss 18 months. As he tried to, what happened to Adams was he had a knee injury and he tried to go non-surgical, so he's going to sit out most of the second half of the season, January until the playoffs, and he was going to return for the playoffs, but he just couldn't get right. And then he was like, okay, I'll take the whole summer and then I'll return. And when he tried to return, his knee wasn't ready and he had to go the surgical route, and so he's now going to miss a year and a half of basketball, but like all these reports, expected to be fully healthy in 24-25. We all expect to be fully healthy in the future. That's how it works. What does this mean for the Blazers? Why are you telling me about a Memphis Grizzlies Houston Rockets trade that has 2 players who are not going to play basketball this season? Good question. I'm glad you asked. Welcome to Locked On Blazers, where we provide context and nuance for the minutia of the NBA and the big stuff too. Context and nuance for all sizes of things. The Houston Rockets have been reportedly interested in Robert Williams. Who is Robert Williams? Well, he's not too dissimilar from Steven Adams in terms of context. He is, a veteran center. He's who's injured and going to miss the remainder of the season and hopes to be fully healthy in the 24-25 season. They make about the same amount of money. Rob Will's a little bit younger and is a little bit cheaper, but he has more of an injury history than Steven Adams does. I think at his peak, it's not even a question that Robert Williams was better than Steven Adams, because Rob Williams probably should have won Defensive Player of the Year one season, but Marcus Smart generously took it from his teammate. Congrats to my man Smarf. But you don't trade for in these situations, you aren't trading for what their peak was. You're trading for what you hope they get back to. And I think in general, like broadly speaking, expiring money and 3 second-round picks is probably about the market you would expect for Robert Williams. I don't think there's a big frothy market to trade for Rob Williams coming off this injury and and not going to be eligible to play this year. There's just not many teams that are kind of at this time of year. There's not too many teams that are thinking about next fall and next spring. Most teams are thinking about this spring and hoping how they can get from April to May and beyond for a handful of them. So I don't think there was ever going to be this big old market for Rob Williams. The market was specifically, it seemed like the Rockets and Ime Udoka was looking for this, right? They wanted someone to back up Alperen Şengün who could provide defense and rebounding and sort of a physicality and that veteran presence that you can just be dependably work with. But I think what it means for the Blazers that is if they were to explore trades for Rob Williams, this is the floor, but the ceiling can't be much higher than this. The floor is going to be 3 seconds now. In the same way that I thought that, I still think this, that Terry Rozier in many ways was a market setter for what you can anticipate for a potential, if there is one, Malcolm Brogdon trade, which is the money to make it work and a protected first-round pick. That is what I assume Malcolm Brogdon's market is, and that's mostly what the reporting has been around it, although I think we haven't heard real specifics on sort of packages, but a protected first round pick has been the reporting and speculation. Certainly is my personal speculation with no sources, just talking about just understanding how the league works. And the way that Rozier set the market for Malcolm Brogdon, I believe Steven Adams sets the market for Rob Williams. That is to say, there really isn't one. There was one team, they were interested in doing one thing, and they did it. So the Blazers are unlikely to move him, which is fine. It's fine. It is not like important for the Blazers to trade Robert Williams. The reason that we discussed it in the past is because there was specific interest. When you are trading him now, for the Blazers trading Rob Williams now, you're trading him at probably the trough of his value, right? The nadir of his value. This is the bottom. Conceivably, he gets back, plays basketball again, and is immediately more tradable on a team-friendly contract, even with all the knowledge of his past injuries that other teams will have. The reason that the Blazers would try to move him is because a team like the Rockets was specifically motivated, or you can add him to a trade. And say Jackson Gatlin of Locked On Rockets pointed this out to me. Say the Rockets are interested in Malcolm Brogdon, or would have been, right? And maybe they still are, but would have been. It's like, and they say, okay, we'll offer you a top 10 protected pick. I said, well, what if we throw in Rob Williams and you take off the protections? Okay, yeah, let's do that. Let's call it unprotected or top 3 protected, and you can add in Robert Williams, and he would be a thing that could kind of sweeten a larger deal. But he, on his own, limited value, on his, if he was playing, totally different value, but that's kind of the calculation for him. And I think you see with the Steven Adams trade, the market that the Blazers would explore. The value would be, the deal would be the money to make it work and second round picks. I think the specifics of this being two picks in 2024 and one in 2025 is not germane to the Blazers and Robert Williams market, because you'd be dealing with another team and maybe they don't have those picks to trade, et cetera, et cetera. But 2 second round picks or 3 second round picks and the money to make it work. Is that worth trading Rob Williams? Probably not in my eyes, but the Blazers, second rounders are going to have some value here in the future, because expensive teams are always going to want to get off money and get second rounders, because it's a stupid CBA loophole to sign second rounders as opposed to veterans, to older veterans. It is, it's just, there is value in second rounders. You can find good players, Jabari Walker for one of them, but it is not super enticing, and there's no reason for the Blazers to rush to it. So that's your limited market. And if there was a landing spot for Rob Williams, it was Houston, and now that ship done sailed. All right, let's talk about Toumani Camara. Boy, was he good on Wednesday evening, and I forgot about him. I'm sorry. I missed him in the notebook. Let's mea culpa and a little mea culpa and some appreciation for Toumani, who was really special in the win over the Bucks. We'll do that in the second segment. But first, let's talk FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. We're closing in on NFL Sunday. In fact, when you are listening to this on Friday, February 2nd, we are a mere 10 days away from Super Bowl Sunday, one of the great betting events of the year. If you're someone who is inclined or interested or maybe just wants to try it out for the first time, Super Bowl Sunday is the time to do it. And FanDuel's got you covered for Super Bowl 58 on everything, on player props and live bets and whatever you want. But here's what you do is you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon, you place a $5 bet and you win heading into Super Bowl Sunday. Any $5 bet you make, if you win that bet, $5 or above, they give you $250 in bonus bets to play with. And that way, come Super Bowl Sunday, you can pull up on the couch, grab the snack you want, and then you can just play around and have a whole bunch of fun on really one of the great gambling days on our North American calendar. So check it out. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Place a $5 bet. Get your $250 in bonus bets to play with. And if you're into it, go have fun. There's no better place to do it. FanDuel, America's number one sportsbook and official partner of the NFL. All right. So a funny thing happened recording a podcast in my basement around 11:45 p.m. last night. I missed a note. And here's how you know I missed a note. If you're an eagle-eared... I don't think eagles have. I don't think that's what that is. If you were paying close attention in the first segment yesterday, I said, I thought Toumani Camara played well, and we'll talk about him later in the show because I had him in the notebook. Like I for long-time listeners, I write this show down in a physical notebook. I go to the Blazer games without my laptop. I use a pen because I don't need to live tweet the games. You guys can figure it out on your own. I'm taking my notes and getting ready for the game, and I'm writing stuff down, and I'm writing my little Toumani Camara notes, and I just got to the third segment and straight up missed him. I was running a little bit long. I was getting tired, and I just screwed up, and I feel bad about it because not only did I prep it from first segment, third segment, it's bad radio, baby, but he played well, and he deserves some love. So let's give him some love here in the second segment. Toumani Camara finishes with a whopping 4 points, 4 boards, 2 assists, and 2 steals. Played pretty well, but the box score doesn't really show it. Played 22 minutes and 43 seconds. Played pretty well. Box score doesn't show this massive contribution. Plus minus of 0 in a game that the Blazers won by 3. That's about normal. And it's like the Blazers were +3. He was 0. Plus minus in these games, mostly meaningless. But this was a big game for Toumani Camara. He drew 3 charges, and he got in the game early, and even just the participation alone was meaningful. He was in the game in the first quarter ahead of Matisse Thybulle, and this is someone who has seen his minutes dwindle recently. Toumani Camara, starting small forward from night one, won the job out of camp, was awesome early in the season, but then his lack of offense kind of made him a liability in the starting lineup, and they needed to make a change. They went to Jabari Walker, and Walker's just been straight up better than him. They're different players and bring different stuff to the court, but like Walker's rebounding and physicality was a huge boon to the Blazers. He's been better than Camara lately and has earned that spot, rightfully taken it, and it's his. But Camara was still playing, in that 18 to 22 minutes off the bench type of role. But the last couple of games, he's really started to see his spot slip a little bit. Sunday against the Bulls, he played 1 shift, 2 minutes and 48 seconds. Came in to play some defense at the end of the first half. We didn't see him again. Then against Philly, he plays 15:44, but 9.5 of those were in the fourth quarter of a game that was decided by 30. So like in a normal non-garbage situation, he probably plays 10 minutes in that game. 9 to 10 minutes. Like he again, not a lot of participation for Camara. So even just to get into the game against the Bucks was like, to get into the game in the first quarter against the Bucks, it was like, okay, yeah, Chauncey Billups going back to this. He's giving a specific look, right? He wants Toumani in the game, and I thought what really stood out to me was that defensive versatility, right? He's come off the bench the last 9 games, so he's being used in this reserve role, but they put him into this game in a reserve role still, but like for the specific purposes of, at least in this one, right away, to go guard Damian Lillard. And Toumani Camara went in there, and I thought his physicality and his length against Dame was really good. Then the fourth quarter came around, and Toumani drew 3 charges in the fourth. Just put his body on the line, got in front of Giannis Antetokounmpo, worked his butt off to be physical and in the way. Giannis is such a like powerful, I dare you to get in front type of driver. And Toumani Camara said, yeah, let's do it. I take the dare. Just absolutely crush me. I will be happy to get the ball back. I thought he was solid and competitive against Giannis, but I think where for me watching the game where he stood out the most was his physicality against Dame and length against Dame and relentless pressure against Dame. I think the Blazers' willingness to let Toumani Camara press has probably gone a little too far. It's probably has diminishing returns at this point because while the pressure is good and the Blazers are like the pressure good. Let me be a little more specific there. While the pressure can have value against players that want to push and know it's coming and can play with tempo and pace, if they beat Toumani Camara in the backcourt, he's 80 feet from the rim and you're moving downhill with a 5-on-4, like at half court. You are giving a team that isn't like this elite help defensive team. You're putting them in a bind immediately. And I think against teams, he played pretty well against Steph, who can sometimes do it, but against, there's times against faster point guards, De'Aaron Fox, or just like bigger wings that aren't, wouldn't be bothered by it. It's like Devin Booker comes to mind, where Toumani Camara's willingness to start guarding 80 feet from the rim has been a problem. It hasn't been, it just hasn't had the value. And you couple that with, and that's a coaching problem as much as a Toumani problem, to be clear. But you couple that where it's like the thing that he was doing early in the year, that full court pressing, which was like was valuable when teams have kind of solved it and specific matchups really can take advantage of it. It's like maybe don't do this on every trip down the floor. Like it's fun, but there's some diminishing returns. It is. When you couple that with his offense, which teams just stop guarding him. They just straight up don't guard him in the half court. And they stopped guarding him, and then he stopped shooting. And you combine those two things, like it's, missing shots is one thing in the league. Not shooting when you get open shots is almost more detrimental to the modern NBA offense. You got to shoot it. Like it's just, it is. If teams know they don't have to guard you, and then when you do get it, that you're not even going to put it up, like you are such a detriment. And then Toumani would couple that with some kind of like, okay, I'm going to drive a closeout. Well, they're not closing out very hard on you. You're driving into nowhere. You're not a great passer, not a great ball handler, like just some bad decision making. And all of those things coupled together, it's like he should play a little bit less. And he was. I think it's fair. It's maybe not. You want him to play well and continue to play well and like, and grow into his role. But in the same way that it makes total sense that they're playing Scoot Henderson a little bit less, more on that later. Like it makes sense to play Toumani less. It is what it is. They're trying to win the games. Whether they should be is for someone else to answer. I think it's fine that they're trying to be competitive personally. If they finish with the 8th worst record in the league, it's not that much more detrimental than finishing with the 6th worst record in the league. But like, after rightly falling out of the rotation, you get Toumani in this game, pressuring the hell out of Damian Lillard, taking 3 charges from Giannis Antetokounmpo, and generally bringing the type of defensive presence that he brought early in the season and made him such an intriguing player right out of training camp. He was impactful. He was aggressive. He played the way he plays, and it worked incredibly well against this specific team. I do think the Bucks failed the test, though, on the final Blazers possession. Blazers don't call timeout. They have Anthony Simons turn the ball over twice in the final minute. Once trying to get a pass into Jeremy Grant, another getting trapped in the backcourt. And they don't send a double team. And with Toumani Camara in the game at the end of the fourth quarter, that's who you double off of. That's Giannis Antetokounmpo's man, and he's kind of cheating and playing free safety. He's got to go get the ball. Anthony Simons has struggled against 2 things: length, physicality. And when you bring those two together, length and physicality and double team, that has been the biggest problem for Anthony Simons this year is handling that in half-court offense. When he's looked his absolute worst. The Bucks don't do it. He hits a game winner. You fail the Toumani Camara test. See ya! The Blazers win. And Toumani doesn't get caught for being a liability on offense. He was incredibly effective, incredibly fun on defense. I hope he earns, more minutes. You're not going to play him every night, but he's the Blazers' best point of attack defender. And if he can grow into something, and I don't know that he's going to do that. I don't think he'll do that this year, but in the future, and as he matures in the league, into something like a slightly below average offensive player, he's immediately impactful because he hustles his butt off and he is a really good defender in year one in the league. And as you play more years in the league, you recognize more patterns, you get better at it. The chances are he'll be a better defender moving forward. I know he's old for a rookie, but he's 23. He has plenty of if you're just talking the timeline of an NBA career, he has a lot of time to be a very good NBA player. Is he going to morph into something beyond a defensive role player? No. But could he be a lot better of a defensive role player? Absolutely. Absolutely. And for him to get to be a positive contributor on the court, he was so good in this game defensively that he was a positive contributor. One of his buckets was a running right-handed hook that was just out of control. I can't believe he banked in a moving across the paint, straight on hook shot. A wild one. But if he can somehow become just not even a good offensive player, a slightly below average offensive player, he has an easy path to being positively impactful because he's already a good defender, and that was on full display on Wednesday night. If I had remembered you in my notebook, Toumani, you would have gotten 90 seconds of me saying you played well. I forgot you in the notebook. My man, you got 10 full minutes of love here in the second segment on a Friday. Toumani was really good. He was a fun watch, and I'm glad he had that bounce back night. Okay, I want to close the show with a question that I got from a listener this morning in the email inbox. What if the Blazers do nothing at the trade deadline? Is that a problem? Let's talk about what that might mean in the third segment. First, let's talk PrizePicks Daily Fantasy Made Easy. Here's how it works. You pick between 2 and 6 players on every entry, and you can play whatever sport you want. You can mix and match if you're into it. So for me, I play the NBA. You can play the NHL. You can play the NFL as we head into the final week of the football season. But you just pick more or less than the projections set by PrizePicks. So for basketball, things like points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, more or less than stat projections set by PrizePicks. Get your money. You go 6 for 6, you can win 25 times your money, but you can call your shots. You can say, I want to get 4 out of 6 right, and here's how much I'll win. I want to get 5 out of 6 right, and here's how much I'll win. Feeling froggy, go big. You can hedge a little bit if you want, and it's just you versus those numbers. So go check out prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use the promo code LockedOnNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. Again, prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA, and they'll match you dollar for dollar on your first deposit up to $100 when you use the promo code LockedOnNBA. That's PrizePicks, daily fantasy made easy. All right. Still past first point guard, still Mike Richmond, still listening to Locked On Blazers. And yeah, I screwed up my intro to the third segment. It happens, baby. I got an email today from listener Todd. And Todd sent, we actually had exchanged emails today, but the premise of the first email was hey, are the Blazers crazy if they don't trade any of their, any of the Rob Williams or Jeremy Grants or Malcolm Brogdons? Is that crazy? Would this be a big mistake? And the answer is maybe. But let's drill down on this a little bit. Doesn't sound like Rob Williams has much of a market. Why would he? He's injured. It was weird that he even had a market. It was a very specific need from a very specific team. I assume he won't be moved. The Blazers are sending every signal possible that they don't want to trade Jeremy Grant. I kind of get why they wouldn't want to trade Jeremy Grant because they don't need to. They don't need to clear space for anyone. There's not a young starting power forward behind him playing Toumani and Jabari Walker a million minutes a night because you trade Jeremy Grant is not necessarily super valuable. There's not there isn't that waiting in the wings starting power forward. He's productive. They need his offense. They like him. They sign him to this big ass contract. He'll be tradable into the future. They don't need to trade him. They absolutely should listen to every call they possibly can. Everyone who calls on Jeremy Grant, they should listen to the call. You listen to field every single offer. There's no like trading block in the NBA. You don't like add Jeremy Grant to the queue and then people can call. Teams talk all the time. And every time they ask, the Blazers should figure out what teams are, what is the interest level in Jeremy Grant? Because if it is high, and I don't know how high it'll be, but if it is really high, go for it all the way. Like press as far forward and pursue that as much as you can. I'm in favor of it, but it sounds like they don't want to. So really, we're talking about Malcolm Brogdon. Like that's what we're talking about. We're talking about them trading Malcolm Brogdon. And I'm on the record. If you're a listener, you know my stance. I think they should and have to trade Brogdon. But there's a chance they don't. He's under contract. Like, they are not legally obligated to. And they obviously like him, right? Like he told, I haven't reported either. I haven't really talked about either of these stories. Jeremy Grant told Sean Highkin of Rose Garden Report he doesn't want to be traded. Malcolm Brogdon told Jason Quick of The Athletic he doesn't want to be traded. What are these guys going to say? Like, that's good reporting. I'm glad they do that. Like, getting those guys on the record, talking about it, that's good reporting. That is the beat 101. It's like, good job. Ask these guys about it that's like just like how you cover the team, right? And that's particularly if you cover it on a daily basis, in the written word, like in like truly on the beats, as opposed to a podcaster such as myself who's floating near the beat. In my case, but like, what are these dudes gonna say? They're gonna be like, can't wait to get the hell out of here. Like, and particularly Jeremy and Malcolm, they're not people who rock the boat. Malcolm's a straight shooter. Maybe he's lying, but like he's smart enough to say the right thing. And I think he has done that consistently. And he's when he first got here, he said he wanted to be here and all those things, right? The Blazers don't have to trade Malcolm Brogdon. I believe strongly that they should, and I believe strongly that they should because I think when they're healthy, having four guards who need to play 25 plus minutes for developmental reasons and because they're talented is too much. It's too much. But Shaedon Sharpe has dealt with an injury for an extended period of time. Is probably going to miss at least another week, and we'll see how long. The Blazers haven't given a real update, but he's just getting back to on-court work after missing a couple weeks with a groin injury that kept him out for 8 games before that, before he came back briefly. So like when you only have 3, when it's only 3 guards, it's not that big of a deal. And I know that I sit here and whine all the time about that. I think Scoot Henderson should play more, and I want him to play at the end of games. And like I nothing has changed with my stance on that. I still would like to see Scoot play at the end of games. And moreover, I would like there to be a situation where the roster is such that they can reward Scoot for where he plays well, because I think that's the actual issue. Plenty of nights Scoot plays terribly, and having him sit at the end of games is like, hey. But when he does play really well, not having a functional roster that can put all 3 guys on the court, could put him on the court at the end of games is a problem. They don't really like him playing next to Anthony Simons, and Malcolm Brogdon is good enough in the Blazers' pecking order that sitting him at the end of games is in and of itself weird. And moreover, like, I complain about Scoot's playing time, but like Scoot's, if Scoot's going to play against Milwaukee, Scoot played 22 minutes. I would like to Scoot to play like 30, right? 27 to 30 minutes. I think that would be a totally reasonable everyday participation for him. Is 5 minutes a night over the course of a season going to drastically impact Scoot Henderson's development curve? No, of course not. Of course not. But my like sort of larger gripe is like, this isn't a good team or a team that's like trying to be good. Like, this is a team that's prioritizing development. So just like lean into it and like really prioritize that development. Go for it. Like, don't. It seems like a half measure. And again, like the thing that bothers me the most is the lack of ability to reward Scoot Henderson. I think they can keep him, like not playing him and making him a bench player so he gets to play against mostly reserves and he doesn't start games and he gets away from Anthony Simons, and that pairing like clearly doesn't work right now. And like all of those things make sense to me. I think Scoot generally has been better off the bench, although like he's had plenty of stinkers off the bench too. It's not a magical cure, but he's generally been better coming off the bench. Like, it totally makes sense. Like, the logic's fine from the Blazers' perspective. It's just like when he plays well once every 8 games, there's no way to reward him. There's no way to play him down the stretch. So I feel strongly that they should trade Malcolm Brogdon because there should be a way to reward him. And if Shaedon Sharpe is healthy at the end of the year, I think they should just play Shaedon and Scoot and Anthony Simons and see what the future is. And there's literally no reason, particularly after the All-Star break, literally no reason for Malcolm Brogdon to play. But if he's here, he's going to play. It's unbelievably clear from the way Chauncey Billups has done things. And that's the danger of standing pat. Moreover, I think I've used moreover like 4 times here in this podcast. It's the word of the day. In addition, there is a concern from some fans that if you trade Malcolm Brogdon, then you'll be light on guards. And you would be, unless you trade for a guard back. And you are legally allowed to acquire players of slightly lesser skill and slightly lesser stature who play the same position as Malcolm Brogdon in a trade. Like you could trade back for a young veteran who plays. Like you could... to use a specific example, like they could trade for Evan Fournier and they could just like have him play a little bit in emergency situations when they needed him, and he could like dribble and shoot and stuff, and it would be okay. Like they don't have to only trade for like some amorphous player that's never going to play or some like, or only draft picks. First of all, it's $22 million for Malcolm Brogdon. So they're going to have to trade back for something, that some kind of money, some kind of contract, and somebody, and that somebody can be a guard. They just need to be a guard that doesn't need 28 to 35 minutes a night, could play a little bit less, and it would be normal. Again, it would be weird if Scoot played over Malcolm Brogdon if you're trying to be competitive against the Bucks. My argument is that you're not always trying to do that, and at some point you're really not going to be trying to do that, and at some point juggling 4 guards that need to play is too much. It's too much. So to answer Todd's question, is it a problem? Is it a problem or a mistake if they don't trade them? I can't imagine Brogdon's value gets higher. There's a chance it remains the same. There's a chance his value right now is something like a top 20 protected first-round pick, and the Blazers are like, dang, that stinks. We thought we were going to get more for that, and we're going to hold out. And when they get to the summer and teams are expensive and they're shifting things around, and they say, what if we trade you, slightly more money in the form of 2 players and you give us 1 player back, we get under the apron, or we get out of the tax or whatever it might be. And in the summertime, there's more manipulating. Teams can look ahead and figure out how to manipulate, but in the summertime, there's generally more teams ducking and dodging and weaving because they have more flexibility with the sort of timing of trades and free agency and all that, right? Like we can get into that later in the off season. So I think Malcolm Brogdon could, if his trade value could remain flat, right? If it's what it is now, it could be that same deal in July, and they could trade him then, right? Trade him around draft night in June, trade him in July and in free agency, whatever it is. Like, I don't think it immediately diminishes, but it's not going up. Malcolm Brogdon is not going to become more valuable. He will be an expiring contract next year, but the value of trading him now is 2 playoff runs with Brogdon. This playoff run and the next one. Like, that's the actual value that he would bring, not just an expiring, at least for the moment. And if he's just an expiring, it means you probably have him till the trade deadline or next year, most likely. Like, it's if you don't get rid of him in the offseason. So I don't think there's like this great... I don't think it's going to ruin them if they hold Malcolm Brogdon. But for a variety of reasons, I maintain my stance. Trade him. He's good. Like, he's good. He could help a team. Whether he can bring back a package the Blazers want, we will see. But I think the danger of standing pat is just that it continues the season-long trend of it being messy. And after the trade deadline. And assuming Shaedon Sharpe comes back and is healthy and needs to play, the value of what Brogdon brings, he's done it. He'll have played 50 games with the Blazers. It'll be time to let him go. And if he's not comfortable sitting and watching, then you get into the messy stuff. So, Todd, it's not awful, but in my mind, and for a variety of reasons, as I've just stated, it would still be a mistake. So hopefully they do something. Hopefully by the time hopefully by this time next week, we can talk about where Brogdon landed and what the Blazers got back in return, because the trade deadline is next week. That's why we'll have a whole bunch of fun next week. The Blazers play a couple games in Denver. Next time you hear my voice, we'll recap a couple Nuggets games, and then they've got some time off before the trade deadline. So we will look ahead and get you covered with everything you need to know heading into a big transaction week in the league, 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts, and also on YouTube. I appreciate you listening. Tell your friends about the program. I'll talk to you soon.